Hello, I'm Mary Nightingale. Welcome to the Piper Podcast, How I Grew My Brand. Today, I'm with Steve Moore and Paul Barham, founders of the social darts chain Flight Club. Since opening in October 2015, they've seen, millions of customers pass through their doors, throwing something like 111 million darts. So far, they've opened venues in London, Manchester and Birmingham in the UK, as well as 2 in the US, in Boston and Chicago. Welcome, Steve and Paul.
Hello. Thank you.
So, we're going to talk about where the idea came from and all of that. But first of all, for the uninitiated, what is Flight Club?
It's a fusion of like 3 things. It's amazing food, amazing drink, and what we believe is one of the most spectacular activities out there. And it is social darts. So we basically put a ton of technology into traditional darts. And then on top of that, designed a massive, beautiful bar with phenomenal music and energy and then elevate it into something of significant size. And then the combination of all of that resulted in Flight Club, which has been a huge success all around.
And you are smiling. You're still smiling, which is pretty.
Oh, it's amazing. Well, we just opened 2 in the last 3 weeks. One in Boston and one in Islington in London, and 2 very different kind of ways we do it. And it's still cool seeing new people play it in different places.
Okay, and I played, actually. I
must say, I
went to one of your venues. I'm not a darts player, but it was a fabulous night out.
From our perspective, it could be darts, it could be anything. People want to eat, drink and play. So that's kind of how the whole activity was organised around that. As Steve said, beautiful food, drink in a beautiful venue. And as long as you're having fun and with your friends, your colleagues, your work colleagues, it's all an integrated experience to enjoy a night or afternoon out.
All right. Where did the idea come from? Because I can see where it's at now, but there's a long way to go between an initial idea and this finished product. So where did it start?
Well, it was actually a proper light bulb moment, and it was in Devon. And it was a rainy day, and we were in a pub. And we weren't actually playing, but there was a group of friends playing darts, and we were like, wow, look at that. There was like 8, 10 people around a dartboard. No idea what they were doing. Chalkball was out of control, boys and girls, and we were thinking, wow, why doesn't that exist anymore? Kind of did when we grew up, and our parents and all that happened. There was a real community feel. So at that moment, we were thinking maybe it's time for that moment to happen again, because it was massively lacking. Because pubs had turned into kind of a quasi kind of bistro things. They put food into pubs, and the games room was gone. So then we set on about 2.5-year journey to kind of then bring darts back into the community, but also do it in a crazy supercharged way.
Okay, and how long ago is this then?
That would be about 6.5 years ago. So Flight Club Shoreditch, the first one, opened 4 years ago.
All right, so it's a 2.5-year gestation. So from that initial idea, how did you actually put it into action? Because there's a huge amount of technology, for example, isn't there, in Flight Club? And explain how that all worked.
Well, the beauty about it is because we weren't from the industry at all, and I think if we were, I don't think we would have even approached anything, because I think the level of kind of ignorance probably that we had, like we had no idea that how would you do any of this. From the bar point of view, from the restaurant point of view, from the building, from the technology, from brand. So each bit that we didn't know, we approached somebody we knew and kind of got them to kind of work it out for us. It was quite spectacular. So from the technology point of view, Hawkeye, who is owned by Sony with 300 million behind them, attempted to score darts once and failed miserably. And then we found a chap who used to work for NASA who cracked it within under a year. So, well, I'll be honest with you, when we first started it, there was no technology involved. We were basing the whole concept off a chalkboard. It was absolutely ludicrous. And then we were doing focus groups after focus groups every day. And then we were kind of realising, I don't think anybody wants to bat up here. I think this is an absolute disaster. So we started layering in technology using Excel and PowerPoint at one point. That was a bit fancy. And then we realised we needed a gaming engine. So we approached some friends who used to work for Disney and then Sony. But then on top of that, we needed to work out how on earth to score a real traditional dartboard.
I think we need to explain exactly what the experience is at Flight Club, because the point about Flight Club is there is no chalkboard. It's all super high tech. And there are cameras and you do selfies and there are different games that you can play. So explain exactly in basic terms what you get.
So from coming into the venue, coming to the reception area, and you're taken to your playing area, which we call Oki. So it's incredibly important to us that being a darts concept, that we kept the traditional elements. So the dartboard to us is a heritage piece. It's iconic. It's untouched. The playing area is called an Oki, like it was back 100, 150 years ago. So your host will take you to that area and kind of walk you and your friends through logging in. So you take a picture, a selfie, your name, and it comes up, says, Mary, you're in the game, above the dartboards. Up to kind of 18, 20 people can log in. So we've taken it from a 2-player game to a 20-player game. And then your host will talk you through the first game. So very, very simple game called Demolition. You start at 180, you finish at 0. I think most of us in our research has played darts at some point in our lives and are stuck on a double. So if you've got 20 to finish, you hit 20. You're obviously in a beautiful bar, and the music's hugely important. I think Steve creates the music and lighting personally, so it's very, very pleased when people mention that. And what's really, really nice, the gaming engine that Steve was talking about and the automated dart scoring that Dr. Jason Dale put together, nobody really talks about that. They don't even notice the technology's there, and that's the absolute beauty about it. It's just people, and that's why we're incredibly proud from the get-go, really, when we started the business. We were reliant on a huge amount of kindness and help from friends and family, using their knowledge and expertise in kind of delivering what we wanted to do. And then it's the same now we're operational. Steve and I are just two of hundreds now in a business that are very incredibly important to what we do. So you're looked after from start to finish by our team and people in the venue. You don't notice the technology's there. You're in a beautiful environment with great lighting, great sound, with great food and drink. And you leave as though you've just been transported somewhere else for the best part of 4 hours. You're not looking at your mobile phone. You're not doing anything apart from just having fun like you were kind of when you were 5 years old, really, sitting on a carpet playing with Lego with some food and drink next to you. It really encapsulates you back to that time.
Our biggest compliment that we see is that, like you said, nobody uses their phones there. Quite often you'd see a whole venue of 700 people, not one person is on their telephone. It's a very unique place. They're just fully immersed.
But to return to how you actually made this thing work, to actually get that technology up and working must have been a huge task, wasn't it?
Yeah, because we essentially had to do something called system integration. So we had to take a lot of different components, an analog component, the gaming bit, the vision systems, everything, and combine them with hardware. But nobody had done this before. We had experts in this field that we found, but actually putting it all together landed with me and Paul. So it was, again, literally a garden shed. It was my garden shed that me and Paul spent every day in, every night in, every weekend in. And we had the first Oki in there. We did a lot of focus groups in there. First technology went in. But that evolution of slowly introducing each iteration, we probably had over 300 versions of the software by the time we launched, because it had to be perfect to the millisecond, every single transition, every single moment, because it's not like a normal game you'd play on a PlayStation. This is like 16 people in a small space, and it's all happening so fast, so to get everything right. So we introduced some more games, then we changed the timings, then we'd introduce the scoring system, then we introduced more people, less people, we changed the orientation, and this went on and on and on. And every time we thought, we've got it, we'd do a focus group, and it was a horror show. And we're like, we got it wrong again. Just stop tweaking it. And then we went back, that's good. So we discovered things by mistake quite often. So iteration, it was all iteration. It was no assumptions.
You love a focus group.
We do. We did like 300. It was honestly exhausting, exhilarating. It was going to be 90-minute sessions each time. Every time it was like 4 or 5 hours. They were like, no, can we do some more? They were just so addicted. And
who were these people? Just friends?
We started off with friends, and then we went to friends of friends, and then we went nth degree from there. So by the time we launched the brand, so many thousands of people had already vested their time and energy into helping us put the product together. So it was a really mature commercial product. On day one when we launched, there was a big venue in Shoreditch. What were we doing?
Let's talk about the launch then. Shoreditch was the first premises.
Yeah.
Big. Ambitious.
Yeah.
Did you go straight in with a big launch? Did you do a sort of soft launch where there's still glitches?
We did 3 test nights, which in hindsight is ridiculous, because nothing was working the day before. And then I don't know what happened, stars aligned or something like that. On the first Monday, everything kind of worked, and we still quite don't know how it all happened, because it was beyond audacious. It was a bit silly, I'd say, in hindsight. But then again, we just went for it, and then suddenly on the Sunday night, it all started coming together, didn't it?
I was still working full time at this point, so Steve was kind of holding all the well, spinning all the plates, I guess. I think what was quite amusing was kind of 3 months out, suddenly realising we needed food. And I thinking actually, we probably ought to think about sort of food offering.
Yeah.
And kind of putting on top of that, trying to combine what food it is with the actual brand itself. The brand was Victorian Fairground meets British pub. And darts originally came over to England via the Victorian Fairgrounds. It was the French brought it over, Le Flechette. So we had people in the focus groups. But what was really challenging, Mary, was what is Flight Club? It's a darts bar. We've played darts in pubs before. How is yours different? It was trying to convey that to people, particularly, I suppose, investors, to customers. I can remember when we set up the phone lines 3 months out.
We employed 3-4 people at that point just to answer the phone.
Answer the phone for what?
Bookings.
I'd like to book.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they were like, why is nobody ringing? This makes no sense. And then we got one phone call and everybody went nuts.
Yeah.
By the time we opened our doors, we were just full.
You were always very confident.
No, we honestly weren't. We were kind of confident really far out, maybe 2 years out, because we didn't know.
You didn't know what you didn't know, did you?
Exactly right. So actually it's scarier looking back because you're aware of, for example, you need gas. It sounds silly now, but we had to dig up half of Worship Street in Shoreditch and they dug up the wrong road. And then they were like, no, we can't do that again for 4 months. But we open in 2 weeks. Right. So all these things like commercial leases, and at one point the builders were going to go off-site because our bank lending failed. So we had basically 6 hours to go and borrow money for 3 days of people, right? Just keep the builders on there, and just I went to Islington Council and cried at one point because the planning didn't go through, right? I was like, please. It was horrible.
When Steve says kind of finding people to borrow money, we raised about 160,000 in the space of an afternoon, and that wasn't from a couple of kind of rich friends or us two guys. We're certainly not
Just
wealthy,
begging.
are we? We had mates putting in 5,000-10,000 just to get us over the line because of the bank funding problems, which was kind of encapsulates really kind of the help and support we had throughout the project, really.
What about more about the two of you? What were you doing?
We did a full circumnavigation of the world in a fire engine. It's actually very difficult to circumnavigate by road.
Well, yes.
Well, but
you seem surprised.
Well, again, we didn't know. So it's one of those things
But
where
what
you
do you
think...
mean you went round the world in a fire engine? You can't just give me that throwaway line. Why? Why?
My dad got lung cancer and he was a firefighter. And whilst he was doing chemotherapy, I kind of came up with this idea about maybe going to China in a fire engine or Russia. I don't know why. It was just, something to kind of raise awareness because not much money goes to lung cancer. It doesn't have a great brand. Even though it's the biggest killer out of all the big C's, nobody really backs it. So I was like, well, maybe we could raise awareness and money for the charity. So we thought we'd do that. And then it kind of escalated, a little bit like Flight Club. We went, well, we started plotting, thinking, well, if we go as far as Russia, we might as well go to Mongolia. And then if we can get as far as China. And then we went, you know what? Looking back is the most terrifying thing because you've got shipping, you've got... The number of visas was like something like 32 visas, border teams. We had 16 border teams in obviously 16 countries. And actually, I made that promise to my dad before he died, and then he died, and I was kind of stuck with having to do it. I was like, oh, okay, now I do. And that kind of preceded Flight Club in the same way. It was getting a lot of talented people together. Again, we didn't know anything. And Paul,
So the two of you
yes,
were on this week?
Yes, there was 27 people in total, and Paul was a big part of the planning and executing of it.
You earned a living, though, at some point.
So
did you work? How do you know each other?
We went skiing with a whole bunch of friends 25 years ago, and then that's where we first
And you met and you fell in love.
Well, I
You spotted kindred spirits. But you were both working in finance in the city, were you?
yes. So
At that point
I was
or shortly
I
afterwards?
was a futures trader.
And Paul?
Worked in private wealth management, so
Okay.
financial services.
Okay, so would it be fair to say then that you were money men? You knew about business, or you just
No.
knew about making a deal?
No, because
Steve?
as a trader, certainly that's got really nothing to do with business as such. I was a proprietary trader, so I used to trade like futures
yeah,
and
okay.
options.
So you
So
basically
absolutely no
you had
business.
the chat.
Kind of. Yeah.
Would it be
I had a lot
fair
of
to
screens.
say?
I was very good at multitasking. I had like 16 screens. I was a quant.
Buy low, sell high. It sounds all very glamorous, trader in financial services, but we certainly weren't two wealthy guys with just money to burn or with parents with a load of cash.
It was terrifying because I took a sabbatical to do the fire engine. I didn't have any money at all to do Flight Club. So it's not like we had seed capital.
Well, I was going to ask you about that
Yes.
because, it's a lovely narrative, isn't it? It's very optimistic. It's a lovely success story. But, the nuts and bolts is you've got to live and you've got to make money. And this incredible enthusiasm there must have been a downside to it as well.
But I think if it wasn't for the fire engine, I don't think, we would have got the backing of our close friends and family or anybody else, because essentially I said to my wife, look, I've just finished the fire engine, sorry about that. And then,
so you left the wife and the 2 small children?
No, there's no children at the time.
Okay, just the wife.
And Amy was on part of the fire engine, so that was good.
Just a word on Amy, really. She's been massive in terms of organisation, in terms of the fire engine, as well as really very much a third co-founder of Flight Club, really,
Yes.
in a lot of ways.
I'm going to leave my job that I've just got back to from the fire engine. We've got like a 6-month baby. So Paul moved in to help pay the mortgage. My mum delayed retirement. It was so broke, and then massive loads of debt doing it, because it took 2.5 years. We honestly thought we could do it in maybe a year. So it was pretty brutal how much debt we got into.
Do you think your lack of experience, your naivety, was a help or a hindrance?
A help. Otherwise, it'd be too scary.
You know, I've read a few interviews. You said there's almost an element of self-harm involved
Well,
when you
that
decide
was,
to
yeah.
build something totally new.
I think there is that sort of weird addiction that we both and a lot of the team really enjoy the journey from A to B rather than getting to B.
Yes.
So the actual building a venue takes a whole year, and there is a kind of an adrenaline kind of thing. Are we going to do this again? We're building a new one in Leeds at the moment, and we're we're doing this again. So the day after Boston, we were heavily into the design for Leeds, and it's kind of a cool place to be.
OK, so at what stage are you now? You know this Piper theory of inflection points, 7, 17, 70, and it's the point at which your business needs to make a major evolution, if you like.
Yeah.
Numbers of people you employ or venues or turnover or whatever. So give me a snapshot of where you are now.
I would say we're at that point. If we've got 9 venues, we have probably the best part of 700-800 people in the family. And it's got quite serious in the sense of the central team. So the central team alone, all the developers, the finance, the creatives, the marketing is kind of 75 strong, which is the size of most companies. That's a big red engine is the central team. So that's got pretty serious in the sense of a lot of employment, a lot of customers. There's a lot of people relying on us to execute this properly. So I think this is kind of the moment we're looking at other international opportunities. Obviously, we've got the second brand now with Electric Shuffle. So it's a very, very, very big moment for us at the moment.
In terms of where we are now and what changes we've had to make, I suppose initially from 2 people and then building the Shoreditch team, right from the get-go, it's been really, really important to us that the entire central team has been able to scale to support the business kind of going forward. And it's very much a team of people now as opposed to just 2 people. There's some really very clever people working in various functions.
And you've kept all of that expertise within the team. You don't subcontract any of it out, do you? It's all in-house.
That was really important to us, to be as agile as we can. It's quite an insane thing to do. Every single service we do in-house, all the marketing, the design, the animations, the program management, the project management, the property, everything's in-house.
So this is really serious now. You've got human resources, all of that stuff that you have to do by the book. How have you adapted to that? Because you're a couple of guys with great, wonderful ideas, brackets a bit crazy, some might say. You have to actually do this properly, don't you, when it's this big?
It is very serious.
Yeah.
But if you take it too seriously, then there's no point kind of being there. So if you have the right framework, the right governance, so we have a 9-strong leadership team to give that business shape. Because fundamentally, if that gets too serious, it feeds through to the customer. So there's still a certain amount of silliness in the whole process because the customer will feel it. So, for example, the room of toys, which you saw in Victoria.
The room of teddies.
Right. If you can't dream a dream and do that room. So it's a room in Flight Club Victoria that has 1,406 at the time cuddly toys on the ceiling. Great for acoustics.
Oh, weird.
It is weird. But then also there we built a full-size helter-skelter to get into the venue. We also built a telephone box that has a disco in it. We had a complete replica to the millimetre of my garden shed. Right, that was quite self-indulgent. But the point is that we just kept pushing the boundaries. We're like, what are you doing? We're like, I don't know, but that sounds like a good idea.
I have so much I want to ask you. You're listening to the Piper podcast, How I Grew My Brand. And I'm talking to Steve Moore and Paul Barham, founders of Flight Club. The dynamic is fascinating. How does it work? And how does it work with the broader team as well?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, actually. And obviously, Steve and I, and our relationship has actually changed quite a bit in the last 4 years, really. So when we originally set up, we both worked on the actual gameplay, the products itself, and spent a huge amount of time and effort investing in that. And that's where we kind of feel our knowledge and expertise lies in actually what the product is. I suppose when we started the business, I joined it a year late, so I was working full-time, picked up some bits from Steve, so ran some various functions. And as we've grown up as a business, I suppose, and we've been able to bring in people who know what they're doing, my role has changed. So at the moment, we're in a really lovely place now where UK and US, we're really growing our business in the right way. Huge opportunities for us internationally, and that's the bit I'm kind of focusing on now, so I can pick up and watch the success in the UK and US and kind of replicate that around the world. Whereas Steve's very much kind of at the helm now, running the leadership team and running a business from that perspective. It's been a lot of change, but like, we love change. We've got 4 values in the business: warmth, passion, togetherness, and really at the heart of it is innovation, isn't it?
Do you ever disagree? Do you drive each other nuts?
No, never.
I think kind of.
I'm saying nothing. I'm just waiting for you to tell.
I suppose Steve and I are lucky that kind of we're badged as founders, and I just mentioned Amy earlier. We've got so many people that were part of that. Dr. Jason Dale on the automated dart scoring, a chap called Dustin Atton, who's now our COO, who works on the operational side. I mean, after all, we are a pub bar business, so someone needs to know what they're doing. But it's now very much a team of 9 people that run this business with Steve at the head, and that's what's really lovely and how that's changed. And we've grown up as a business, but we still go on holiday.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Not just the 2 of us, but yeah, we do. We still ski together. No, absolutely. I mean, there's not 2 founders out there who don't go through incredibly challenging times together, because if you did just completely get on, probably means you're doing the wrong thing, because you're not kind of testing, challenging each other properly. So
I want to ask you about the venues. They are enormous, aren't they? And they're not in what I would have thought of as traditional sort of entertainment hospitality spaces. That they seem to be in all over the place, like in something you might expect to be an office space.
Well, Victoria certainly is. Victoria's kind of the only one that's kind of in that kind of building, and we took that space because of its locality in Victoria. And Victoria's quite a sad little place. It's all a bit grey, isn't it? Yeah. So we went, no, we'll give it a massive fairground. It's got a really cool outside area. But if the likes of Shoreditch, Blooms, Manchester, especially Birmingham, and Islington is like an old pub.
And that's a departure for you as well, Islington. That's a slightly new direction, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a bit smaller and it's a slightly different approach.
It is.
Right?
So to put it in the context, so Flight Club Victoria, where you went, holds like 750 people. Islington holds 150 people. It's beautiful. And I think that's kind of where we want to go long term, because our goal was to bring that kind of cuteness and more community to the world. So if at any point we can get back to Croyd at the end of the journey and have a pub with 3-4 Ockies in it, that would be kind of the end of the UK journey, should we say? So Victoria's the big silly concept album. It's the Sgt. Pepper's of it, and Islington's more like Let It Be. It's back to basics. It's kind of small. It's cute, and and it's raw, and it's just the most fantastic venue in the world.
What have you got that means that you're succeeding where others are failing?
I think it's detail, but fundamentally, because the staff love the product so much, and they play it after hours. They play till like 6 a.m. Honestly, the service is so good, because they understand and help build the product and love the product, so therefore the customer will. And I think that's kind of lacking elsewhere. I suppose we're not a one-trick pony, if you like. We're not just a bar. We're not just a restaurant. We're not just somewhere where you come and bowl, for example, because if you went bowling, you probably wouldn't think of hanging there for a bar or something to eat. It's a very much an integrated offering, and we kind of consider ourselves a destination for that. We hope that people see their entire night there. So you come there, have a drink before you play. You might have some food and enjoy the music and enjoy the atmosphere. So that's why some of our venues are kind of set up from a destination perspective. And originally our business plan was destination. Would you believe Shoreditch was a destination place? And the bit we're in has changed quite a bit now. It's so important that we're a great bar and kitchen in our own right, irrespective of the social darts. Because if you don't get that bit right, you kind of lose the whole focus of why you're there, and then you put the social darts onto that, which gives the atmosphere and the enjoyment. And that's kind of where we think we're successful, along with the people that work there, the product we've got, and the constant innovation that we put into that.
I want to talk to you about the people, because there's a war on talent, isn't there? Everyone wants the good people. How do you hold on to your team?
Our retention is insane.
It's very good, isn't it?
Unbelievable. So in the central team, it's near on 100%. And in the venues, it's like record highs in industry, mainly because of our commitment to development. We've had waiters and waitresses that are now like assistant general managers after 4 years. And because of additional venues, we can provide that kind of career development.
Because
And
you're
that's
growing
everything.
so quickly.
Yeah. And so we can really show these guys, if you're the right person, we're going to believe in you and we will develop you. And then that is just fantastic. You sit across the board. It's so cool when you go into Islington or you go to Victoria and you see the AGM that you knew was a barman or bar lady in the first flight club, and you're like, yes, this is so cool. And you see that across the board, and retention is fantastic because of it.
But that can't be maintained when it gets really big, can it? Or can it?
Why not?
Yeah,
I don't know, you tell me.
Yeah. Steve got kind of an external consultant to come in to talk us through the vision, mission and values of our company, which are incredibly important to us. And it wasn't Steve and me. We're sitting with some consultants in a room thinking, oh, they sound really, really great, don't they? We had the entire team from Shoreditch, the entire central team, actually sat down and thought, what is it and why are we here and what we're doing and how do we want to go forward? And I think the values underpin absolutely everything we do. I mean, Steve and I are kind of naturally very kind of friendly, hopefully. You're very, very respectful people. And the way we're kind of talking to you and the guys here, Mary, is exactly how we speak to every person in the venue. We kind of see organisations that haven't really got that flat structure in terms of how they speak to each other. And for us, everybody's so important in what we do.
Everybody's valued.
Everybody's hugely valued, and we're incredibly proud of what they do.
Do you get much external help?
Not so much anymore because we have a people's expert now. But again, that's something we kind of reinforce. In fact, we reinforced it yesterday. We had the end of year review, and the awards for the month are always done on values, not on performance. So it's kind of, I think it's a cooler way of looking at it, isn't it? The guy who won it, Fran, it wasn't like because you worked very hard this month. It was because you shone in warmth. And these are the examples of it.
What about investors? Because, you were saying you maybe need to get funding at the end of next year or whatever. How do you visualise the next stage?
So it started off with 43 friends.
Very happy friends, I should imagine.
They are now.
Yes.
That made it equally terrifying. The only person we didn't let invest was our parents, just in case it all went wrong. Had somewhere to go. Too many of them put in too much money that they couldn't afford. So
how much money did you need to start with? Take me right back to the beginning.
We did about 1.5 million in equity, and then probably about half of that in debt, so about 2.5 million. So that was incredibly stressful because we said, look, honestly, you have to, this money's lost now. It's gone, right? You have to pretend it's lost. But even after it all went well, we actually genuinely would have been very upset if we lost the money, even though you disclaimed it. So it was terrifying.
I mean, it's so precarious, isn't it? And that naivety and enthusiasm combo that you had, it worked, but it easily might not have done.
Well, especially because you hear a lot of only 1 in 1,000 startups work and all this, and you're like, got to get past the first month, and you're like, can everybody stop telling me this?
I suppose what's very important to say is what we do is we take what we do very, very seriously. We didn't take anything for granted. If somebody told us something, kind of an expert from a solicitor or somebody in property, we then ask somebody else. We triple checked everything because we understood early on that it's not about asking a question, it's not about asking the right question.
There was an incredible amount of detail. Every single part of that business plan was so deep.
And what about the next stage then? Because you started with these 43 investors and you had to get more funding then, presumably a little way in. So what happened next?
So we've done 3 fundraisers already. And each one takes a chunk out of you each time because it is an exhausting process. It's really cool because obviously a lot of people are really super interested, but then each time you go through this journey of the legality behind it because it is all very serious. And I suppose doing that 3 times now in total, is it? And then so the one we probably will do next year will be a bigger size, but we have to be comfortable that we can deliver the people, which we are now. Because like we said, to keep that DNA, there's no point doing 10 venues a year if you can't staff it properly or the venue's not cool enough and there's not, So I think we're getting to the point where we can do that and then the funding will be appropriate for that.
You're already stateside, aren't you?
Yeah, Boston and Chicago, yeah.
What is it next step, the world?
In terms of growing the business, I suppose we've kind of got 4 key pillars to our business plan. Is like continuing to kind of grow the UK market in the right way. Our new concept, Electric Shuffle, which is a shuffleboard, which we launched 2 weeks ago in Canary Wharf, and it's going incredibly well. And we were just as excited about that as we are about Flight Club Darts. So it's growing those 2 brands in the UK, pushing on with the USA expansion, obviously being English-speaking and the biggest global market for us, potentially should outweigh anything the UK has. And then, growing us internationally. So there's opportunities in mainland Europe and Australia, just 2 places we're currently working on. We've never really led ourselves from a financial perspective. It's always been from a product and how much we can grow the business. And Steve just came back with our CFO Ross from Boston last week, and it didn't even speak about the financial aspects of it. It's just the sheer joy of hearing people cheering in Boston of something that kind of was created in Steve's shed kind of 5 years ago. It was quite a moment for you, wasn't it?
But you're never quite sure because it's popular everywhere so far.
Is there a moment of doubt in your mind?
It always is, even though in secret, outwardly you just say, oh, this is going to be fine. And then you're like, OK, doors open. London's a bit like, they love it, but they give it 10 minutes. Yeah, it's fine, whatever. This
cool.
is cool. Manchester were like, this is amazing. Birmingham, 10 seconds in, they're like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. And Birmingham has gone crazy for us. And it's always like with Boston, I was like, what's the noise going to be like? Because I can just sit there, I can hear like the differences in the venues. You always just wait for that first moment on that opening night after, and you're like, does it have that same noise that Shoreditch has of that screaming? It sounds like you're in a fairground, and in the distance you hear somebody on a roller coaster. You hear that wee, oh, yeah, it's just like constant. And then you hear that in Birmingham for the first time, and then when we were in Boston last week, and I heard it, and I was like, oh, it's fine, it's all good.
They've got it.
They've got the noise, yeah. And you can actually tell which game they're playing as well from which noise it is.
Okay, so how do you decide where to go next? Would you return to your old haunt of China without the fire engine this time? What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. It'd be cool, wouldn't it?
I suppose in terms of the next opportunities globally, we were quite on top of our intellectual property on the outset. So we've got quite a portfolio of our trademarks and patents globally. So in terms of the next steps, obviously USA, that's really a huge opportunity for us. Secondly would be Europe. Obviously the English-speaking parts of Europe, Ireland would be the clear focus of ours. And then obviously you're looking at the bigger economies in Europe, such as France and Germany. So a big part of it is partner identification, because if we were going to do it ourselves, we'd have to build a team from scratch. And you're talking about then 2-3 years away by the time you built the team and obtain the property. So we're probably looking for partners in those jurisdictions as we would do in Australia. So I think those 4 outside the US are kind of a clear objectives for us. And again, if there's opportunities elsewhere, we'll obviously look at them. But we have got a strategy in terms of which global jurisdictions we're going after first.
How do you define success? You are a success by any standards, right? Does it feel like that?
It feels like project's only half completed, really. There's so much more we think and we want to do. It's a good question.
I think it's quite relatively straightforward. It is that noise that we're talking about. It's that screaming. It's bringing that joy back to a particular town or that wasn't there before. So if you hear that joy in more places, if you hear it in Sydney, that's cool. If you hear it in Beijing, that's equally cool. And that's kind of success, really. I think if you had kind of financial milestones, I think you're kind of screwed. Some people get into business to make X amount after 5 years. We were just like, we just want to do something cool. And then, if the money follows, that's great. But if not, it's okay, as long as people enjoy the product.
Does it feel good to have made money? At what point do you sit back and just spend it?
Well, we haven't taken anything out of the company. We kept all the equity in the business.
And there's you don't have dreams of yachts and beaches and
a bit seasick.
Villas.
All these gentlemen know that the motivation is it's nice not to be like completely bankrupt, but it's just money doesn't even matter at all. I'll be honest with you.
Are entrepreneurs born? Are they made?
I think they come out of necessities sometimes. Maybe it's in you, but on Matilda's, my daughter's birth certificate, I went in there and I was like, I got to register, and it was like occupation. I was like, shit, I don't have a job because I'm like creating Flight Club with Paul. And I just put down entrepreneur, and the lady went, you haven't got a job, have you?
Do you ever get the fear? Have you ever had the fear?
Yes. 4 a.m. every night.
Every night? Do you?
It's terrifying.
I don't know if you're joking or not.
No, that was my serious face.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, no, it's terrifying. The whole thing's terrifying. But that's kind of cool. I think if it wasn't, it's like, that's kind of where you get the adrenaline. It's generally terrifying because we know one like thing that doesn't go quite right can really drive
over-expanding. People do it again and again, don't they? And it goes all
like
under.
Velocity is everything, right? If you get it under or over, then actually, it's a mistake. So yeah, constant fear. I think it's fear of probably letting people down because you know that there's a lot of employment there, a lot of friends who invested and still are.
Responsibility.
So, yeah. I reckon it took me like at least 6 months to be elated about launching Flight Club Shoreditch because the fear was still, the anxiety was still there.
And do you think that's what fuels it in a way? That sort of anxiety. And Paul's keeping really quiet here. He's not admitting, he's going, yeah, I'm cool. I don't worry about anything.
We're in charge of a business that's turning over millions of pounds, and ordinarily if you were going to recruit a CDO off the shelf, my CV wouldn't get anywhere near it. It's removing that fear and having the confidence that knowing that you understand the business. Anything's possible. We proved that with the fire engine. We proved that with the fire truck. And this is actually kind of, in comparison, this is actually quite easy.
But Paul's done five Ironman. So is it 6? Sorry,
6 Ironman.
Yeah, you can. Okay, so 6 Ironman. So I think you can probably assume from that he also enjoys the pain of the A to B.
Yeah. I just want to smash myself up.
Yes,
Well, you've said the whole venture's self-harm, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is,
to actually do it.
yeah.
Let's look to the future then. You've got this massive success on your hands. You still enjoy it. That's the whole point of it. But when you look ahead, what's the biggest challenge, do you think, that is facing you? And I'm thinking back again to this 7-17-70 thing, because you're going to reach another inflection point where there have to be big changes.
I purely think it's the velocity of growth. I really think about getting that right, getting the balance right. There's been so many good brands before us that have got it wrong, and trying to foresee that, I think. And will there be a pivot? It would be unusual for us not to have a pivot within the next 5 years. But it'd be kind of foreseeing what that might be.
Paul?
Ensuring we keep that DNA throughout. When you think about it, the business starting in 2015 and now it's only got 9 venues. That change is, an incredible amount to deal with for anybody.
Well, yeah, it's the communication of the journey. So you can either communicate too much and everybody just gets terrified, or you don't communicate enough and they're like, I don't know what's going on. So it's that's a really big challenge.
What advice would you offer to someone who was looking at you and wanting to take inspiration from you? What advice would you?
From the very get-go,
Yeah.
I suppose, ultimately, what problem are they trying to solve? We were very, very clear from the outset that in terms of the space we were in the industry we were going into, social entertainment venues, that we wanted kind of an integrated offering where there was a quality of gameplay. And I suppose that was the problem we were trying to solve in the market. Be very clear what you're trying to solve, because unless you know that, you kind of lose focus of what you're doing, really.
You can pretty much achieve anything. You just have to be very aware from the get-go that you don't need to actually do it. You just need to find somebody that you went to primary school with. I had people who went to primary school who helped us with branding. One of my good mates from school I hadn't seen in 20 years is Dustin. I had no idea how to run a bar, so my friend from university, an accounting company, and I was like, can you help with that? I don't know what the balance sheet is. So I think actually people will help you if you have the right story. And I think too many people will suffer trying to work everything out themselves. Build a team.
And have fun.
You got to have fun every single day. Work with friends as well. It's amazing. So just build a company where all your mates can work. It's quite cool, isn't it? Yeah.
Look, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much indeed, Steve and Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.